Picks and bans are coming out really quick this time. We've got Akali, Amumu, and Xin Zhao banned out on the side of Ernst&Young, and Draven, Lux, and Taric worked out for Epic. Thresh being first picked for the support. There we go on the blue team. Graves and Malzahar actually getting locked in. One man army has his Malzahar is pretty solid. I gotta point this out. I've seen a couple of games of that one happen, and I gotta say, just from looking at that, I'm pretty excited to see that one and how that works out. But that does mean the mid lane for Ernst&Young has not been picked yet. So that lane could go pretty interesting. Simo 29 and Mano Steel locking in. AD carry Misfortune, and it looks like jungle Lee Sin. It could very well be a top lane or even a mid lane Lee Sin at that. Not quite sure how that would fare against the Malzahar. I think the silence and the dot might be a little bit of a trouble for him, so I would imagine they'd send that either top lane or the jungle. I'm Kid locking in the Maokai jungle. For that one, that's a pretty standard workout so far. I'm actually liking the team comp for Epic at this point. You know, you've got the pretty standard and the really strong kind of tanky-ish Graves, who's gonna really have a lot of lane control down in that bottom lane, and interesting. But then you've got Malzahar, which is really gonna zone out those team fights. He's gonna focus down one person and either try to catch them out or just completely remove them from a fight, making it basically a 4v4. And with Maokai and Blitzcrank being locked in, that's usually a really strong pick. Harmonious Fist and Plog locking in Kha'Zix and Olaf for the blue team. So it's looking like it's actually going to be an Olaf top lane, a Lee Sin jungle, Kha'Zix in the mid. And I'm actually a little surprised that Kha'Zix made it through this far. You know, I mean, these are targeted bans at the players, and they're really strong bans at that. But rather interesting that Kha'Zix made it that far out. So Kha'Zix going to be locked in for that mid lane. He's going to be going up against that Malzahar. And I actually haven't seen that matchup a lot, so that one's going to be a really interesting and a really keynote to watch. Meanwhile, Black Mamba 1221 locking in Shen, one of the pinnacle top laners. The big deal, though, up in that top lane, though, I mean, you've got Olaf. He's going to deal a lot of true damage. He's got a lot of lane sustain, and he's got just general. He's just generally a really strong champion. Even after the nerfs that they gave him, he's still a really strong champion. He's not quite as, you know, holy cow. Let's set this straight on the record. No, I mean, he's still a very solid top lane champion, especially against something like a Shen. You know, Shen's got a lot of sustain, he's got a lot of health, and then he stacks health just constantly on top of it, because that's how you build Shen, because everything he has scales with it. So, you know, the true damage coming out from Olaf is going to be able to work its way through Shen's very large health pool. The big deal, however, is Shen's got a little bit more, I guess, teamfight utility. You know, he's got the taunt, he's got the stand united, whereas Olaf's whole idea is that basically he's going to be trying to barrel down on top of, you know, one of the carries and zoning them out completely. The big thing to note is that if Olaf, you know, goes down on top of Malzahar is probably either going to be ulting during a fight or staying in back and just using his range and the damage over time. But it's most likely going to be ulting during a fight, so he's going to be a sitting target for Olaf. Meanwhile, you know, you've got Graves in the back with that, you know, Maokai to peel or that Blitzcrank to peel, and I don't know. That's going to be a fun one to watch out for. You know, watching Olaf just sort of target in on someone and completely push them out of a fight, because you cannot stop an Olaf who's got that Ragnarok on. He's no-seat crowd control is going to be applied to him, so you really just can't do anything about it except for kite him and hope that, you know, you can survive long enough for that one to go down, and then you can turn around a fight and see what goes on that way. The other big deal, though, is, you know, you've got Kha'Zix and you've got Lee Sin on that same team, so they've got a lot of leaping ability. They've got a lot of appeal in that aspect. You know, Lee Sin's going to be able to kick people away. He's going to be able to jump onto carries. Kha'Zix is going to be able to jump onto carries. Olaf is just going to run into carries. He doesn't really care, you know, what you have to say about it. So Misfortune is going to kind of be left at the whim of Thresh and maybe Lee Sin if he stays back. But they've got a very assassin-y, bursty composition. Whereas, you know, Epic's got kind of that team fight oriented, tanky, you know, we protect the carries and then work that out later. So it actually could go either way in that aspect, but we're going to be getting into the game in about 30 seconds is when it starts. Ernst&Young versus Epic. Epic actually 4-0 so far in Season 3 of After Hours Gaming League, whereas, let's see, Ernst&Young at this point, let's see, 0-3 I have down here. So it's kind of the underdog versus the sort of top-sided, you know, undefeated champion, I guess, if you will. Well, undefeated team, if you will. Let's see. Epic is actually one of the very few teams that have not lost a game so far in this AHGL season. So we're getting into the game, and here we go. Ernst&Young versus Epic. We've got, once it loads up, let's see. Ernst&Young going to be on the blue side with Thresh support. You've got played by Talif. You've got Simo29 on that 80 carry Misfortune. Man of Steel on that jungle Lee Sin. Kha'Zix being played mid lane by that Harmonious Fists, and then Plog as that top lane Olaf. Meanwhile, on the red team, you've got Psych Out playing the Graves 80 carry, one-man army playing that Malzahar in the mid lane. I'm Sakid in that jungle jungle Maokai. Raffles playing the support Blitzcrank, and then last but not least, Black Mamba 1221 as that top lane Shen. Now, one thing I did want to point out, actually, again, is that Black Mamba is the player that played the Warwick from a couple of games back that we saw that handled that 2v1 gank top and almost came out with a double. It was so close, but we've seen some really, really solid play coming out of him. So it's really definitely a team to watch and a player to watch from that point. But Ernst&Young does have a bit of a showing. You know, they've got sort of the ability, they've got the opportunity, you know, to get into this one, to get a foothold, and to say, you know, we've really got this one to ourselves. Let's see here. There's a pause going out. Malzahar is actually disconnected. He's loading it up right now. So we're going to be getting into the game here in just a minute. Working this one out, though, I mean, just taking a look at where we're at, even in the very first second. Thresh at this point is the only one on the map with items. That means he's the only one that's spec'd so far into utility to get the Explorer Ward and the Total Biscuit of Rejuvenation. Meanwhile, anyone on Epic doesn't quite have that. Now, sometimes we'll see supports get that just for the safetiness aspect of it, but I'm a little interested. I'm wondering what else that Blitzcrank has got spec'd into. He might actually be spec'd into defense onto that tree, and a little bit more on that one just has the stats from the Gold Pretend, but then again, that'll be interesting to look at. Alright. So we got Blitzcrank versus Thresh in that bottom lane. Misfortune versus Graves. Shen versus Olaf. Kha'Zix versus Malzahar. And there we go. Alright, so working out across the map, Epic is setting up to defend and to watch his blue buff. Meanwhile, though, actually Ernst&Young could be going for an invade. They might be going down here from the bottom. Epic is coming down the river at this point. Oh, they might actually catch someone out here. Blitzcrank is heading forward. He does have the rocket grab. And let's see here, Olaf and Misfortune actually might get caught out here. Flash forward comes in from Raffles. He actually does land a hook, but the Talif lands a hook onto Maokai. He's going to have to flash out and barely make it out alive onto this one. In fact, he's even started chugging one of those potions just to make sure that he stays alive. So that was actually a really solid hold there by Ernst&Young. They did, you know, someone did get grabbed by the Blitzcrank, and it was, let's see, Kha'Zix was the only one to really burn that flash. You know, meanwhile, you've got one-man army. He burned his Ignite, trying to get a first blood here. You've got InsigmaTheory. He burned his flash, getting out of that fight. You know, he even burned a potion, which might get him at a little, you know, lower health coming out of the jungle. And then Raffles did burn the flash, flashing forward, going with the a grab. So Ernst&Young actually kind of came out ahead on that invade. Man of Steel actually starting with that that red buff, and a little bit, I think he was deciding whether or not to go smiteless on the red or not. Meanwhile, you know, looking across the jungle, they've got wards down at their own buffs. At this bot lane, a couple of early wards down here in the river and the tri-bush from both teams. So they are going to be able to spot a gank coming down. But Maokai is heading up. He actually did get a smiteless pull onto that blue buff, so he's going to be able to get through this red really quickly. You know, meanwhile, you've got Lee Sin still going through his wolves to get to blue. So we might see a gank coming up to top lane here pretty quickly. Back at mid lane, you know, Kha'Zix started off the Fairy Charm as well as the 3 health potions and the 2 mana potions. But pretty standard start here from Malzahar, getting the Crystalline Flask. Lee Sin actually skipped his blue buff, went straight to top for a gank onto Black Mamba. Black Mamba's still actually alive at this point. Just had to burn a potion. Didn't quite have to use Flash just yet. And Maokai looks like he's starting to head towards mid for a counter gank at this time. Though Kha'Zix is staying really safe. He's actually got a very large wave pointed straight this way. Lee Sin's heading towards mid as well. Kid actually waiting here in the bush. Malzahar lands, doesn't actually quite land the silence. The knockback comes back from Malzahar, and Man of Steel is going to flash over the wall and stay safe at that mid lane gank. He's actually going to turn around, just go straight back to his jungle and try to farm up, because at this point he's kind of set behind. Though, meanwhile, down at the bottom lane, actually, Simo getting really low from that gank, or from the pull onto Raffles. Flash forward comes in from Graves, and the shield comes out from Thresh, but it's not quite enough. Misfortune is going to go down. Thresh turns around, tries to fight this one back onto Graves, and he's going to get exhausted, and they're just going to pull back, take the 1 kill from Misfortune, and fall back. Meanwhile, you've got one-man army and InsigmaTheory taking the blue buff on that top side jungle. And Talif down here alone in this bottom lane is just going to go down, go up to ward, and possibly back out. Yeah, he's heading back right now. Meanwhile, up at top, actually, Plog and Shen actually just working out a fight at this top lane. Shen actually did just go down to Olaf. They were actually right on top of each other. Couldn't quite see that one. Heading up. Psych Out and Raffles backing out at this bottom lane. They're just going to head back and use that use the money from that first blood. Buy a longsword and level 1 boots. Actually, Blitzcrank didn't quite back out. But let's take a look. Let's take a look across the map at the items. So you've got Lee Sin at this point. Bought his Boots of Speed. Did get that level 1 boots, but he's just now seeing that the blue buff was taken. Meanwhile, down at the bottom, Misfortune's coming back to lane with a Doran's Blade and a couple of health potions, so she's going to have a little bit of damage right now, but she doesn't quite have her boots, whereas Graves came back with the Doran's Blade and that extra boots, so he's going to have a little bit of that movement speed and might be able to use that to his advantage. Meanwhile, at the top, Shen came back to lane with a Ruby Crystal and Rejuvenation Beat, so he's got a little bit of health and health regeneration. Whereas Olaf came back with a Null Magic Mantle and level 1 boots, so he's got a little bit of magic resist to sort of mitigate the damage from the Shen. Down at the bottom, Maokai might be setting up for a gank here. Both of them just kind of farming out. Raffles walking forward with that overdrive, lands the grab onto Talif. Here comes InsigmaTheory landing the Twisted Advance, and Talif goes down. InsigmaTheory picking up a kill onto Thresh. Down there at the bottom, putting the kill count at 1 to 2. 6 minutes into the game, though Simo is still there in that bottom lane, not afraid of the Blitzcrank at all. Rocket Grab just came off of cooldown, and she's going to have to back out and be pretty careful here under her own turret. Man of Steel down there at the bottom, though, offering a little bit of support. Blitzcrank and Maokai are heading back. Kha'Zix, though, looks like he might be, he's heading towards mid. Yeah, he's just warding out here, and Lee Sin's just going to head out as well. Pings are going down from the blue team onto the bottom lane. Up at the top, Black Mamba trying to farm this one out. Plog and him just kind of trading back and forth as much as possible. Though, down here at the bottom, Talif kind of pushed out forward a little bit here. Looks like he wanted to make something happen, but the minion wave was just a little bit too large for that, though. Kha'Zix and Lee Sin are heading down. Graves has fallen back, and no wards are going to spot this one just yet. But I think they're going to head back up, realizing that there's no one quite here. And Raffles is just going to miss him, heading towards Dragon. Though pings are going down, so they are fully aware of it. Though meanwhile, up at top, Black Mamba and I'm the Kid heading down here on top of Olaf. Olaf is 6th, though, so he's going to land that Ragnarok. Twisted Advance comes out from Maokai, closing the gap, but he's not quite going to get rooted. And meanwhile, pings are going down here at mid lane. Showing that Lee Sin is still here. Lee Sin, actually, at this point, is still level 4, so this has got to be really careful. One-man army actually lands the ult at the pool down on top of Harmonious Fists, but he's going to have to fall back because it's not quite enough damage. And that one's not quite going to be it. But a flash forward comes out from Malzahar. He does land the dot onto Kha'Zix. It's quite a bit of damage, though, with that dot and the ignite. But he's still going to be able to make it out alive. And now Malzahar is actually mid without any flash or ignite. His ult is down for another 90 seconds. So he's got to be really careful at this point. And, yeah, but looking across the map, you know, I'm the Kid, Maokai just hit level 6, or level 5 is about halfway through. And Lee Sin at this point has just hit level 5, 8 minutes into the game. So he's really, really far behind. That's definitely not where you want to be as a Lee Sin. Once you get behind, you're kind of in a bit of trouble. Though, you know, it's not completely impossible for him to come back, but he's just got his work cut out for him, especially with these ganks. The biggest deal, though, is that, you know, across the map, there are wards everywhere on the red side. You've got Tribush warded, and well, now that one's just taken down because of the sight ward, but you've got, or the vision ward. You've got Dragon warded. You've got all the way across the river. The only real not warded spot, or well, no vision spot, is up here. And Malzahar is just going to sort of play safe on the bottom side of mid lane. He's going to stay down here where he knows it's pretty safe. Onto that one. He's just pushing really hard onto Kha'Zix, though. He's kind of keeping him there. Kha'Zix is one of those champions where it's really popular for him to run around and you know, to gank. But if he's stuck under his own turret and he's taking a lot of damage and trades that he just can't quite keep up with, he might be in a little bit of trouble. Lee Sin was heading up towards mid for a gank, but he had to back out of this one. I'm the Kid once again heading up top for a gank. Plog did pop the Ragnarok, so it wasn't quite rooted down or taunted at that, but they are just going to really put the pressure onto it, though. Malzahar's coming up. They are going for a turret dive. They do land the ult on top of Olaf, and Olaf is going to go down. Shen picking up the kill there up at top lane, putting the gold lead at 12.9 to 10.7, so it's about a 2.2 thousand gold lead, you know, 10 minutes into the game. Though bottom lane, Graves actually was setting up for a kill on top of Simo, but didn't quite hit the collateral damage onto that, so Misfortune's still into lane. She does have bullet time, too, so they might be able to make something happen out of this. Thresh did come back to lane, though, with just a rejuvenation bead. Still doesn't quite have any straight items, but he's just going to use the bullet time to clear the minion wave out, trying to land a hook onto Blitzcrank and pull that one back in, but now that lane is really being pressured for Ernst&Young. Actually, taking a look at the items, though, Blitzcrank did actually buy a Doran shield. It's kind of the first time I've seen a Doran shield, actually, just in general, in a long time. You know, usually you'll see it up in top lane, as it's really, really useful for someone really, really harass heavy. But with the amount of health you get from things like ruby crystals and the rejuvenation beads and giant spells, usually you'll just straight up rush, you know, your health stat rather than get a Doran shield. Though mid lane, Harmonious Fist getting completely ganked on top of taking a lot of damage from that damage over time, but he's going to be able to make it out alive. It's not quite going to be enough damage to kill him off, but they're putting the pressure onto it. Mid lane turret is taking quite a lot of damage, and they're just going to keep pushing this one down. I don't think there's going to be any way it's going to, yeah, it's not quite going to go down yet, but it is at half health. So it's definitely a very real concern for Ernst&Young. Twisted Advance lands down on top of Lee Sin, but he is level 6 at this point. He lands a Sonic Wave on top of Malzahar. He doesn't quite want to make that happen just yet. A Silence lands down under Harmonious Fist. He does pop the ult on top of it, but he's going to flash out. Kid is going straight for a dive under that level 2 turret. It's not quite enough damage, and Man of Steel turns around and pulls a kill down there at mid lane. Meanwhile, down at bottom, Misfortune getting pulled into Blitzcrank. It's just so much action going on. It's kind of going insane, but Teleport's coming down here at the bottom lane. I don't think they've seen it just yet. Plog lands, doesn't quite land the undertow onto Blitzcrank. He does pop his Ghost, and here comes Shen ulting in on top of Blitzcrank. He's actually made it down. Thresh tries to get the turret or the lantern out to keep him safe, but Plog does have his Ragnarok, so he's just gonna be able to run out. Meanwhile, there's that turret going down mid lane, so one-man army really putting the pressure onto that one. So, holy cow, ladies and gentlemen, these two teams, you know, Ernst&Young versus Epic, they're actually fighting this out. You know, it's not a one-sided. It's not easily a one-sided stomp. They're really putting their foot down and saying, you know, you got to work for your win, and they're working it out. So that's pretty much where we're standing. Sort of taking account for what's going on. You've got 2 kills to 4 for Epic. 13 minutes into the game, 14,300 gold to 17,300. So that gold increase has actually worked its way out. But Harmonious Fist is actually going in onto one-man army. He's actually got enough damage to work that one out. He's going to back out and sort of just clear out the wave. Maokai's just going to have to hold this one because he can't quite do anything about it just yet. Up at top, though, Olaf's once again really pressuring down Shen. Both of them, actually, Olaf came back to lane with a Doran's Blade and an Elixir of Fortitude. So he's looking to get an advantage here pretty quickly. The bottom lane, Man of Steel, was setting up for a gank. They were going to have to back out and stay alive, though Raffles getting a little bit aggressive against that. He's just going to push forward. They're going to establish control over this lane once again. Maokai was setting up here for a gank at the bottom lane. No ward has sighted him quite yet. There is a vision ward in that tri-bush, but the entire river at that point is controlled by Epic. Blitzcrank was setting forward, trying to land a rocket grab. No one's quite giving him the opportunity just yet. Lee Sin sitting in that tri-bush, so it could end up being a 3v3 down here at bottom. Graves is pushing up the wave. Raffles walks forward, does land a knock-up onto Misfortune, but Lee Sin actually pops in, gets hit by the rocket grab. He's going to kick Blitzcrank out. He gets taken down by Graves, and the exhaust comes out from Thresh onto Graves, so they're just going to back out. Not quite going to get any more from that one. Meanwhile, though, up at the mid lane, Malzahar and Kha'Zix were heading down, but they did meet up, and Kha'Zix obviously didn't quite have enough to deal with it. As, you know, that Malzahar ult is just, it's a lot. If you're stuck alone dueling a Malzahar, and he's got his ult and he's got his null zone down, you really can't, there's really not a whole lot you can do about it until you get something like a Quicksilver Sash, you know, to really get yourself out. But, I mean, if you're just dueling him straight up, you've got to have enough of a health pool to hold that out. Otherwise, you're really not going to hold this one. Hold that fight. Though Kha'Zix did get his Brutalizer, and he went for his Tear of the Goddess, as well as the Vampiric Scepter. So he's going for a lot more damage, hoping he won't run into those fights anymore, and maybe get the ambush on top of Malzahar before Malz does land his Nether Grasp. So up at the top lane, though, Plog and Black Mama duking it out. Plog is actually getting pretty low. Ignite goes down on top of Olaf. Olaf's getting really low at this point. Vorpal Blade actually lands down on top of him, and Black Mama's going to pick up a kill up there at the top and turn around and just try to push this turret down. 17,500 gold to 22,400. 3 kills to 7, and Epic is starting to look a little bit better, though. Blitzcrank lands the pull on top of Talif, taking a little bit of damage from Graves, but the Lantern comes out, putting a little bit of shield onto Misfortune. The collateral damage comes out from Graves. Simo is getting really low. He does try to dash forward to pick up a kill. The Ignite, the last take of the Ignite picks off Misfortune, and a flash forward comes out. A double kill from Graves onto bottom lane, and mid lane, actually, Kha'Zix gets a kill onto Malzahar all during this time. And these two teams are just, once again, fighting this one out. They're establishing their place on the map. They're saying, you know what, if you're going to get something somewhere, you're not going to you're not going to get it without losing something. And that's exactly, it's just trading back and forth constantly. So bottom lane though is taking a red buff for Ernst&Young. That one's going to be taken down, and they're actually just going to clear out that red buff so they have the timer when it comes back. And they've got the entire bottom side jungle warded. Actually, look at the ward coverage from both teams. I mean, Ernst&Young has a little bit of their bottom lane warded out just now that that top lane Tribush has gone down. But meanwhile, you know, you've got the entire bottom side jungle warded out, and there's that Lee Sin just getting himself a little bit of vision. He's going to see that his red buff is down. But, you know, you've got that entire bottom side ward, or that entire bottom side jungle warded. So they've got a really good set of control. One-man army almost got a ambush onto Harmonious Fist. Blitzcrank is going to overdrive forward, get a ward down into that bush off the side. And they are just going to straight up push this middle lane. You've got Blitzcrank and Maokai here. He actually lands a grab onto Man of Steel. The silence goes down, keeping him from running away. And there's the ult comes in from Malzahar, picking up a kill onto Lee Sin. And this middle lane turret might go down. You got to be really careful, though, because Kha'Zix does have quite a bit of damage. And now that Malzahar's ult is down, they might have to deal with that one. Misfortune and Graves down here at the bottom lane, trading this one out. But Blitzcrank's heading down. Heads forward on top of Thresh, but he lands the knockup onto Misfortune. Lantern goes down, shield this one out, but he actually lands the grab onto Misfortune. Meanwhile, Kha'Zix came in onto the bottom here, leaped over the wall. Shen ulted in on top of Blitzcrank. He's down here in the fight now. Malzahar picks up a double kill on Misfortune, and Kha'Zix, and Thresh goes down under that turret almost immediately. Plog, though, teleporting down, getting hit by the damage over time from Malzahar. This turret is actually going to fall. There's really not much Ernst&Young can do about it. You know, Man of Steel and Plog are the only ones up at this point. I don't think they can quite fight this one out, so they're going to, yeah, this turret is going to go down. 4 kills to 13, and Epic is really, really, really taking advantage of their early game lead that they got. You know, that invade that they did didn't quite get them anywhere. They ended up kind of further behind for it, but when the game started progressing, you know, Ernst&Young started trying to make plays happen, and Epic wasn't quite having any of it. All the ganks from Lee Sin didn't quite get anywhere. He fell behind really quickly, and Maokai just started making things happen really fast. And that bottom lane, I mean, Raffles and Psych Out, this bottom lane is just extremely strong. In fact, let's see, Graves here came back with a Bloodthirster and an Avarice Blade, so he's going to be going for the Static Shiv. Meanwhile, you know, Simo29 still working on her Bloodthirster, or the Bloodthirster for Misfortune. See, everyone from Epic is heading up towards the top lane. Man of Steel is backing out into that bush. There is a ward onto that one. The taunt lands down on top of Lee Sin. He's going to safeguard back to Plog, but the Twisted Advance keeps him forward onto it. And Man of Steel getting really low. Meanwhile, Plog here gets ulted by Malzahar, but he actually pops his Ragnarok, so he might be able to make it out alive onto this one. The silence doesn't quite land it. The kick hits back from one-man army, and it's just not quite enough. Those two are going to go down. Meanwhile, though, Blitzcrank and Graves picked up a kill onto Kha'Zix in his own jungle. And they're just heading straight up this mid lane as well as the top, really putting that pressure onto it. Simo29 is pushing down this bottom lane turret. She does get that outer turret down now, so that's the first turret that Ernst&Young has actually caught at this point down in the bottom lane. Though they did lose top lane and mid lane inner turret as well as the second turret. Inhibitor is working its way down, but it's just Graves and Blitzcrank pushing it, and I don't think they're quite going to get it. But that's still an open inhibitor, and they're pushing this top lane second turret down. So that's, I mean, it's 4 to 16. It's 21 minutes into the game. You've got all of the outer turrets, all of the second turrets, and actually Plog gets grabbed here by Raffles, but the Thresh Lantern actually comes out, gives him a little bit of a shield. Imson Kid actually getting really low on mana, but Talif gets completely focused down. Graves is going to pick up a kill there. Man of Steel is getting ulted by the Malzahar, held under his own turret. It's not quite enough. Blitzcrank is actually able to finish that one off, and Plog and Simo got to be really careful right now. One-man army, though, could get burst down by Kha'Zix, but the ignite and the damage over there, the dot from Malzahar is enough to push Olaf out of this fight. Mid lane inhibitor and top lane inhibitor looks like they're going down for Ernst&Young. It's 4-18. I mean, it's almost 22 minutes into the game. Ernst&Young might they're in a bit of a pickle. Let's put it that way. We've seen worse comeback, or we've seen crazier comebacks. We've seen bigger things happen here. So it's again, it's definitely not over. There's always something you can do to win a game. There's always something you can do to turn things around and possibly get something. It's going to be really hard for them. The big deal though is that Epic really only took out this top lane inhibitor. Now, while mid lane inhibitor is still open, they're only going to have one lane where super minions are heading down. Though actually, Epic is heading towards the bottom. Pings are going down on Baron. Ernst&Young might be able to make a Baron fight happen here. Or they're putting down a lot of vision up there in the top. And Kha'Zix is just going to head towards mid. Dragon's being worked out by Psych Out and I'm Just Kid. They're just once again going to establish control. There's a 13,200 gold lead at this point for Epic, and now it's 39,000. So that's a 14,300 gold lead right now. Let's see here. Just taking a look at the gold distribution here. Shen is about 2,000 gold to 2,500 gold ahead of Olaf. You know, Maokai is let's see here, 24,000 gold or 2,400 gold. 24,000, holy cow, would that be bad? No, 2,400 gold ahead of Lee Sin. Mid lane inhibitor is actually going down though. But I mean, just looking across the map, you know, you've got Malzahar is really far. He's actually about 3,000 or almost 3,000 gold ahead. You know, you've got Graves, which is 3,000 gold ahead of Misfortune. They're in a bad spot. Graves has finished his static shiv, and he's got a pickaxe, so he could be going for a Last Whisper next, or maybe an Infinity Edge, depending on the money he has when he goes back. But there goes mid lane inhibitor down. And Ernst&Young are kind of on the back foot. Epic is going for Baron right now. Shen is split pushing this bottom lane. He's got the Sunfire Cape. And actually Olaf and Misfortune are heading down, so they might be taking the bait here. Black Mamba is just going to kind of back out and just put the pressure onto it. Meanwhile, Epic here is working away at this Baron. It's about 1,000 health right now. Lee Sin wasn't quite there in time to steal it. One-man army actually flashes forward to try to land the ult on top of Talif, but he was able to flash out and stay alive. So one-man army's flash is down, but his ultimate is still up, so they might be able to catch someone off guard. Lee Sin did back up in that topside jungle. And Shen actually soloing Misfortune down here at the bottom lane. She's actually got to back and be really careful though. And let's see here. Epic is working on this bottom lane turret. The Harmonious Fist ults in and tries to get something to happen here, but Kha'Zix was just not enough. And the Graves gets down a double kill onto Lee Sin as well. Shen picks up the kill onto Thresh, and Malzahar was able to clear out Olaf, but this Nexus turret are going down. It looks like Epic here is going to win against Ernst&Young, and they are going to continue their undefeated streak here for the After Hours Gaming League. Once again, my name is InsigmaTheory. You can catch the action every week here, or usually on Sundays. Sometimes scheduling happens, but you can catch the action here live every week on twitch.tv/InsigmaTheory. You can also follow me on Twitter at InsigmaTheory and Facebook. .com/InsigmaTheory for the social media there. But make sure you guys catch the VOD on youtube.com/AfterHoursGamingTV for all the recordings. Thanks for tuning in once again, and I'll see you guys next time.